Boom.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, Lenny. How you doing?
Good, good. Joe Tully, how are
I'm
you?
good. I mean, good. How are you? I just wanted to
Good.
let Kane go first since he works for Dirt Wheels. That means he has seniority.
Whoa, whoa, let's not go there. Let's not go. There's no seniority here. But I got to do my little morning spiel. Welcome to the morning show presented by ATV Talk. We need to thank our sponsors, Elka Suspension, GBC Tires, and DBR Racing Products. Thank you guys for all your support and everybody else on the banner behind us, JSR, SSI, Fatboy 4 Exhaust, and so on. Thank you for your support and allowing us to bring you these talk shows and everything else that ATV Talk does for you. Kane Schmid from Dirt Wheels is joining us today. Joe Tully, a usual on the show from ATV on Demand. ATV on Demand, gentlemen, you got the topics today. We're gonna break it up a little bit and go from there. Joe and Kane, you guys are probably more adept to talking about some of the things that I want to get into about trail safety and the trail riding that we're going to do, or the recreational riders are going to do. One of the things that we don't cover enough, I think, on my show is the recreational riders and the enthusiasts. Without them, none of us would have a job. So we need to make sure to give them a good
huge
shout
part
out.
of it.
Yeah, they're a huge part of it. Huge part of it. So, right, Joe?
100%. No, I'm, not recreational guys are over 90% of the market. Yeah. If it wasn't for them, there'd be no market. So,
I agree. Kane, you spend a lot of time out on the trails because I do follow you on Instagram and your social media, your personal stuff that is attached to Dirt Wheels. What are some of the things that you're finding? I know that you're huge into the UTVs, but from the ATV side of it, it's causing problems for the ATV industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, since moving up to Idaho, I joined a couple groups, mostly, well, dirt bike and UTV, ATV groups. And so you hear a lot of the things that go on, and basically it's the off-trail riding is the problem. Hill climbs and, riding where you're not supposed to be is a huge issue. Out in the desert, it's not such a big deal because when someone goes off trail, it's not so pronounced. But if they go off trail on some beautiful green grass covered mountain, it's noticeable. So they have to put up fences and things like that to keep people off trail. So, number one is stay on those trails so we don't lose those trails.
Do they have any type of etiquette classes or anything like that you're aware of, that when you go into the groups or you go into a trail ride scenario, that they're doing any type of education of the what I'm talking about is the newbies? Because your old school ATV guys, this, Joe and I have talked about it, and I know that you and I have talked about it, that when you got broke into the early motorcycle ATV world, there was always an older guy there giving you the etiquette. Raise your hand for witch's eyes, or danger, stay to the right side instead of the left side, little things like that, and plus your parents always made you pick up the trash every day. So is there anything like that going on in the UTV world?
Not that I know of. There are those ATV, UTV safety classes that you can get for free when you buy a machine. And mostly they tell you how to ride safely. They don't talk about etiquette as much. I did attend one last summer just to see what it was all about. And it was mostly just keeping people from crashing and getting hurt more than the etiquette on the trail. But that's a good point. And that would be an easy place to add it right away. And the problem is a lot of people don't take those classes, even though they're offered for free. I think the manufacturers pool money through ROVA to pay for those, but I just, they're supposed to be mandatory, but it's really hard to get people to follow those rules before they go riding.
Is there anything that you've been out on a lot of tour trail rides? I don't mean to exclude you, Joe.
No. Please,
we're going to get
don't.
into your part. Is there anything that goes on before you go on a tour where they talk about etiquette at all, or anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely always have a writers meeting, and mostly it's to keep the group together and not miss a turn. So that's the number one thing is keep your headlights on and stop at the T's in the road or the Y's in the road and make sure that guy behind you sees where you're going. We do talk about doing the hand signals, if you see an oncoming vehicle and stuff like that. And the ones I give, I definitely make sure people aren't out there doing donuts or going off trail, because if the routes that I use get shut down, then that's bad for my business.
Right.
But that's such a small part of the market. And you're right, that education needs to, we should have a page in the magazine every month just reminding people about that etiquette. I think that'd be a good idea.
So what you need to go down a list of finding like your top 10, top 20 etiquette items that people need to be addressed on. Joe and I have spoke multiple times about this, some of the damage that's happening with what I would call uneducated UTV drivers, damaging a lot of the trails. And Joe gets really in depth to it more than I do with some things that are going on in Utah and other places. I'm going to let Joe talk to us about those right now, and then we can answer questions from there. Go ahead, Joe, and tell me what you were telling me about Utah and was it Virginia?
Yeah, let me ask Kane what he's heard, because when you're in the industry, you hear a lot of stuff, kind of like the 250Rs coming back next year, which isn't happening.
The dirt wheels have been throwing that April Fools at us since I've been a kid.
It keeps me wishing.
There's a Duncan 250R in just about every issue, so everybody should be happy.
I am happy. Thank you.
I'm happy. Kane, I had heard that out in Utah, I didn't read this on a government website, so I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that part of Moab had been closed and that there was another big portion of Moab that they're talking about shutting down. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, there's a new trail management program going on where they're kind of redesignating trails, and it's happening here in Idaho too. And so yeah, I believe some trails in Moab got shut down, but some got reopened. And then I think it's something they do every so often. The BLM, they go through and make sure all the trails that are on their maps should be open, and they kind of fine tune it. And it's, if the public doesn't get on that comment period, we do get a lot of trails shut down. But certain clubs and certain organizations like the Blue Ribbon Coalition, places like that, they really try to help get the word out and make sure the public comments on that stuff and says, hey, we use that trail, that's our yearly vacation for our family, we love that trail. You got to comment with items like that to keep the trails open.
Do you think that there's starting to be a problem with the volume of off-roaders? Because I know that, one of the things that I discuss with Lenny a lot and other people in my circle, because I'm an ATV and a side-by-side enthusiast and a former dirt biker who still likes dirt bikes, and we all have our biases and stuff, as far as who's doing what, who's causing what. But seems like there's a big emphasis, especially from the industry leader, Big Blue, Polaris, to we want more people, more people, more people. And I heard that Camp Razor, um, I believe it was Camp Razor over Halloween weekend. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard that was it's just so crowded. Almost to the point where I'm starting to wonder, are we having a problem with too many people doing this in too many big vehicles to the point that it's going to start impacting riding areas? Have you seen anything like that? What's your feeling on it? We haven't discussed this.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of people doing it, which is great for everybody. The issue is most people do exactly what their friends are doing. So all the people are gathered in one spot or one popular spot, and that becomes the issue. There's plenty of trails out there. There's plenty of riding areas, but like Badlands Off-Road Park, is probably only busy certain weekends of the year, or maybe every weekend. But you go on a Tuesday and Wednesday, and nobody's there. So that's the I guess you would call it an issue, but getting people out there, we all need that. The manufacturers need that, the tire companies need that, the motor companies need that. We need customers. But educating them, saying, hey, it's better to go on an off weekend, because Glamis is empty on an off weekend, but you go on Halloween, there's a million people there. I don't know why people do that, but they do. They just like being around their friends and riding with their friends, and that's when their friends go. They don't go on those off weekends. I mean, Lenny's a big family dune guy, and I'm sure his family doesn't go out there on the busy weekends.
When we do get to go, it's on an off weekend or a family special event. Right now, to be totally honest with you, we're so busy. If we get to even think of going somewhere, it's to the recliner to rest, because everybody says the ATV industry's dying. Well, if the ATV industry's dying, why do we keep getting busier and busier?
Mm-hmm.
And no, we're not into UTVs. We've stepped 100% away from that, because if you can't keep up with your ATV business, why would you even think of trying to step into that market that doesn't have enough people in it as it is to service engines and trannies and steering boxes and all these other things that can break?
Yeah.
We're getting off topic a little. One of the big things that Joe and I are worried about is when you have the amount of people that are trying to enter a lot of these trails, they're getting so chewed up, and the size of the vehicles are getting larger, the size of the tires bigger, so the tire ruts are deeper, so there's more and more damage and erosion. Do we need to like pump the brakes a little bit and shrink the vehicles, maybe put smaller tires on them, something like that, to do a little bit less erosion?
Sure, that would be great. I mean, horsepower limits and tire size limits would be great, and then that would help innovate other parts of the vehicle. Unfortunately, we live in the U.S. and the U.S. customer wants it bigger and better. That's just the way it is. So,
Right.
yeah, like on the tours that I do in the Mojave Desert, I tell the customers that, hey, it's going to get rough here for a little bit, and then we're going to pass a sign that says the restaurant is this way or the bar is this way, and then once we pass that sign, it gets smooth again, because that's the traffic is going to those little hot spots, and yeah, they're pretty rough and chewed up.
And that's in the common areas, correct?
Yeah, that's in the busy areas, and it's the same at Glamis. Glamis is so big, but people just ride to the swing set or the Sunset Hill or the Oldsmobile Hill, but you go to thousands of other hills out there, and they're smooth.
Right. What was it you were hearing about in Virginia? Was it Virginia or West Virginia that you were getting information on, Joe?
My buddy Chad Westcott, who keeps up a lot on topics, government stuff like carbon credits, land closure, stuff like that. He'd mentioned to me a few weeks ago that West Virginia was wanting to pump the brakes on any trail expansion on public land just because a lot of the locals are kind of getting irritated with the fact that, you live up on a mountain in a trailer and you got to get down to the store, you might have to take a dirt access road to get there. And just, while our off-roading is good for the manufacturers and everyone involved in that chain, it's good for the local hotel, it's good for the restaurant, and there's definitely some trickle down in the economy that maybe, the average local resident doesn't see. And, I think that, basically from what I was told by Chad, there's that, West Virginia is sort of getting some pushback from locals about off-roading, making things more difficult on them. So they're talking about pumping the brakes. And, there's another question for Kane. Like, have you heard anything about West Virginia trying to slow down trail expansion or anything like that?
I have not. I know Hatfield McCoy just opened a new trail. Most of that's on private land, though, coal mining land. But I could see that problem, and a lot of the problem lies in the loud machines. Those loud exhausts. They're great for racing, but they're a little annoying out in the beautiful wilderness when you hear a loud exhaust ripping by. That was Moab's original problem, was the loud exhausts and loud stereos of the off-roaders.
I know in
Have they
Arizona.
done have they done anything to mitigate that, to reduce it?
Not that I know of, and it would be real simple. You have a $1,000 fine or a $5,000 fine for a loud vehicle going, at certain times of day, and the word would get out real quick not to go there with your loud machine.
How about the radio thing? Because that's pretty obnoxious. You pull up to a gas station in Arizona and a guy's sitting in his UTV and his radio's cranked, way louder than you can't even sit in the vehicle. It's so loud. But he's got his radio on and he's in the store buying something.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. That's a audio system is the last thing I'd install in my UTV.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I want to transition here to something else, because I know that you are a ATV lover as well in your life, because I've raced against you and we've done stories together and spent some time doing some other things in this world on ATVs. Joe does a lot more with some of the mid-size ATVs and talks about them, like the KO 200. Something that we're missing, because I know there's little kids quads that you can get 90s and other size vehicles from other different manufacturers, but you get into that middle world and there's really nothing of any quality any longer. I was wondering if you knew anything about anything like that, and Joe's going to jump in and give us some information about a couple of the other models that he knows about as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not much out there right now. And that's obviously it's a stepping stone or a good entry into the sport. And it's unfortunate that the manufacturers have dropped those. I don't know why, because in the motorcycle world, the dirt bike world, there is plenty of trail machines. They've come out with these lower cost air cooled or liquid cooled 250s and 150s to get the wife or to get the girlfriend or get the teenage kid out there riding. But they've abandoned the ATV world, except for the Chinese. The Chinese are seeing it. They're bringing those machines over, the Kaio, and we've tested the Kaio against I think a Can-Am 200, and maybe it was the Raptor 250 when it was still around, or some.
It was a KO 200, Honda 250X, and the Can-Am DS 250.
Right. There you go.
I read.
You probably still have it by your nightstand.
I do. I have lots of your material by my nightstand.
Yeah. And that was I was glad they came out with it. They definitely didn't do a perfect job, but it's better than the non-existent Raptor 250.
Yeah, why would you ever stop that? That was one of the most popular ATVs sold for such a long time. Still, the popularity of the Raptor 250 is still you can't get enough parts.
Yeah, and they're still building them in the race machines, putting dirt bike engines in them, or modifying them. The kids back east are still racing them, and some out here too.
Right, right. Joe, your knowledge of that KO is I like it because you fill me in on little details about it every time we talk. Is there another machine that's comparable to that maybe that we could present to the aftermarket guys to possibly elevate these machines into a different realm instead of, oh, it's China, let's run away from it? Well, I'm sorry, guys. As much as I don't want anything from there either, they're the only ones sending them over here, so we got to freaking do something.
To circle back real quick on what Kane was saying, to kind of lead into the KO discussion, it's like I'm in the same position. I every time I go to an event, I torture manufacturers with discussion of sport quads, why they don't build them, why they're important for the industry. The next generation needs something to buy, affordability, financing a $25,000 to $45,000 side by side for 9 years is not the solution. Actually, it's 8. My local dealer told me that they'll finance a new side by side up to 8 months, or 8 years, excuse me, and that's just not. That is not the way to get the next generation into off-roading, is by sending them into nearly a decade of debt at age 21. It's like college loan lending. Only you don't get a degree, so you don't make money.
They won't own that machine in 3 years.
Right, because if you're financing it for 8, a lot of side-by-side guys, they'll want to buy a machine and they'll finance it for 5 years. And then 2.5, 3 years in, you've got enough of that loan paid off to trade up or to trade in. But if you're doing an 8-year finance, the value of the machine is never going to cross paths with the amount of money you owe on it until so late in the loan that your car is going to be just beat. No matter what it is, unless you don't drive it. But anyway, to stay on point about sport quads, I don't understand why, Honda has a Kawasaki has a KLX 300, great little trail bike, could be a sport quad motor. Honda has proven, the whole CRF F line, like the Kane was discussing, they got a 90, a 110, what are they, a 200, a 230. 250. I don't remember how many, but they got 4 or 5 under 250 cc's, and it's a 400EX fuel injected would be the equivalent, but Honda doesn't want to touch it. One thing that all the manufacturers are saying to us consistently, and when we're doing the back and forth on this, is they want to talk about the attorneys and how the attorneys just don't want it. And from Honda, I take them at their word. But when you work for a company that makes a 1000cc 4x4 and you're telling us that your attorneys don't want you to do it, I'm calling BS. Because if you can't make a 45 horsepower, 400-pound machine, because of potential liability, then how do you sell an 850-pound, 90 horsepower machine? Like, the chance of injury on that aren't significantly greater in the event of an accident. I can roll backwards gently down a hill with my Raptor. If I don't fall 10 feet and it lands on top of me, if I just roll backwards, I can push that bike off me. I can leg press and bench press that bike right off to the side in a very gentle rollback. Big 4x4, no, I'm breaking ribs. So it's not about, it's really, I believe at the end of it, it's about economics. It's not about lawsuits. It sounds good. I'm sure it's a factor, but I don't think that's the big factor. I think the big factor is they want to build ATVs that cost almost as much as side-by-sides, because the whole model in the dealership has moved away from profit at the point of sale on a unit to profit on selling extended warranties and accessories. So I think that's why the Japanese are kind of stepping away from it quite a bit, and North America, because the business model has changed. Um, which leads us into the Chinese.
I don't think that their number crunching is correct. In my opinion, not to get off track here, I think if you presented a recreational line of ATVs, they would go bazonkers in sales because there's nothing out there for anybody anymore. You bring even a Suzuki out, which is your bottom feeder brand, people are going to buy it because there's nothing else.
Oh, you mean that brand that made the best sport quad ever made?
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, let's not get started with that. We'll get
Um,
into that, but you're jumping the gun a little bit. What I'm just getting at is if we build 4 different models of machines, whether they're air cooled, carbureted, or fuel injected, doesn't matter, and produce them for the industry, you've just changed the whole dynamic.
and
People
I
are going to
think
go
that
for an ATV ride again.
until the economic situation changes drastically in our country, or if we start having problems with land closures due to the big vehicles and the focus goes back from public area riding to riding on private property and private parks, kind of like it is in Europe. That's when you're going to see the manufacturers really kind of maybe step in, I think, with a new sport machine, or if they see somebody else making money and then they get jealous. So back to KO. KO has a 200. I first learned about it from Dirt Wheels because I was talking to Carl Kramer, who was a former head editor for the publication, and I kind of said, "Have you heard anything about anybody who's next?" And he said, "Well, we tested a KO 200 a while back, and that was kind of a cool little machine." He said, "I think the market's next big hope for a sport model is probably going to come from China," and I think he's right. So we read the KO test in Dirt Wheels and were pleasantly surprised at the review of how it performed for being a little 200 four-wheeler. You don't expect a lot, but the review of the performance and the durability of it was actually pretty good. And so we want to stay on that forefront of what's next. So we reached out to KO and kind of said, "Hey, can you send us a unit?" Between seeing the Dirt Wheels article and ordering our test unit from KO, we started searching like for other sport quad models just on YouTube, on the internet. Like, what do they have overseas that we don't? Are we missing anything? And we saw that KO has an A300 in Europe that is 4-valve, double overhead cam, water cooled, fuel injected, 5-speed transmission, um, bigger, longer, wider. They're claiming horsepower somewhere in the 30s. I don't know that I necessarily believe it. If they're even close to 30, then that would put the horsepower of that machine somewhere in line with the stock 400EX, which would be more than adequate for an entry level ATV. And so I have talked to the guys in North America. They say currently China doesn't have a plan on importing the unit to the United States because of all the hoops that they have to jump through with regulations. And that's probably one of the biggest things that stop people from trying to bring machines to market, is just that our government puts you through hell to make it happen. You can't just build anything and sell it in this country anymore without jumping through regulation. But they said that,
doesn't Russia do that? I thought America was free.
Ish. But they said that they didn't know if they wanted to go through all the trouble of EPA compliance, just getting it certified to get it into the country. And, I asked them if they had any kind of a break on doing it with the 200 because of its smaller displacement. And they said, no, we had to do all that stuff with the 200. And to which I'm replying, if you bring that 300 in the country and it's a decent platform to build off of, It's decent in stock form and it's got potential for upgrades. You could sell 3 times as many of that unit as you could at 200. So, what I'm doing right now, and we'll see if it works. I talked to, um, I talked to KO and basically said, hey, can you guys send can you possibly get a unit sent into the States just for evaluation, just so we can do a review on it, put it out there for the world, show the US market, hey, this is in Europe, this exists, this could exist here. Would you be interested? And I talked to Jeff over at Dirt Wheels, who works with Kane, and said, hey, if I can get one in the country, will you guys take a story on this or run a story and do something with it so that we can mutually kind of put this out in front of the market just to test what the interest would be? Because if we could show KO, over in Asia, hey, the US market would love to have this, then they're going to be a lot more likely to go through the trouble to import it. So there's nothing exactly coming, but I'm trying to advocate to make something happen if it's possible.
Let's hold that train of thought. Kane, what do you think about that happening? If we got that, if Joe got that machine in, would that be something that Dirt Wheels would jump on as far as doing a review, trying to boost the introduction of a new model?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That would be, I mean, that's all we need is something new and fresh to spur the market again. I mean, even if it was a 400EX with new body work, new tires or something new. Unfortunately, I think the electric ATV is going to be that new thing. I mean, there's plenty of new kids quads coming out electric, and then the next step would be that mid-size. I see you shaking your head, but
you're in trouble now.
I just
you're never gonna make it work in this world. The electric market, they already are predicting the electric car market's going to fail and decline. I understand that what you see, but it may roll into it slightly, but it's never going to take over because we do not have the technology nor the ability to build a machine that's going to be light enough, functional enough, with a battery that's going to live long enough to go enjoy them in the environments that we want to take them.
I 100% agree with you. I'm just saying that it's something new, and that's what the ATV guy likes. He likes the new, latest and greatest thing. I mean, you look at the popularity of the Segway UTV, just because it's a new brand and some new technology possibly on that thing. People love it. I mean, it's one of our highest viewed articles is Segway stuff right now. And people still think they're electric, which they're not, but they're hungry for new stuff for sure.
They've been fooled into thinking that electric is the way to go.
And electric is the way to go in areas, in spots. Electric has its place. And, I'm a motor guy. I like my engine. I like to hear it. I like to hear it a little bit less now than I used to, because I understand that, quiet pipes save ride locations. I'd rather ride with a quiet pipe than Tom Carlson pipe that's like 125 decibels. Makes horsepower, I've heard, but they're very big.
I rode with Tom. I can't hear you. Did you say something?
Right, exactly. But I remember as a kid riding in my childhood friend's backyard, and God bless the neighbor next door. We hated him for years. We were pissed at him because he shut us down, and here I am almost 30 years later, and I get it. Like, that man was very patient to listen to our 4-strokes for almost 3 months straight, buzzing between the houses before he actually called the cops and had them come enforce a noise ordinance on us. He was a very patient guy. We go out and we'd go session, go ride 30 minutes, go in, hang out. We're teenagers, eat a sandwich, go ride our mountain bikes through the neighborhood, come back. ride another hour or two. Had we had electric dirt bikes, the fun would have never ended. Maybe we would have had to charge them, but for local motocross tracks, places that you could put a racetrack that you normally couldn't because of noise. I mean, you could literally build a motocross track 100 yards from houses if the bikes were electric. And it's not going to be the solution for going 200 miles off road, climbing mountains. But for short course, things like that, I mean, everybody I talk to who's ever ridden electric go-karts or gas go-karts, more than half of them are going, the electric ones are more fun. They're zippier. They're quicker. So
I agree with your analogy on the noise in the neighborhood style stuff, where you can bring a set of machines into an area and have a riding park in the middle of a housing project, and nobody's going to complain because it's quieter. It's not going to create the same amount of issues that having, 30 or 40
four strokes.
450 motorcycles flying through the air, and the guy in the air going bah, 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 on his rev limiter. I get it. I think that's awesome. So your closed, tight environments, you could even have your go-kart tracks in the same area doing the same thing, electric.
And here's one big thing that, all right, I'm going to be careful here because I tend to speak my mind too much. But one problem I've had is that I've discussed with manufacturers is disingenuous marketing. And disingenuous marketing is where you're trying to check every box of a type of person in your ad. And I didn't grow up in the suburbs, with a bunch of latchkey kids. I grew up in the hood, and me and all the brothers rode BMX bikes together, and that's what we did. And I look at the marketing that they do these days, and I tell these manufacturers, it's like, look, man, if you want to get people in the city, if you want to get just not all your pasty white boys out there doing power sports, do what Can-Am has done. Build machines that are accessible to an urban crowd, not a suburban crowd. If you live in the city, you don't have a 2-car garage, you don't have a 30-foot trailer, you don't have a ride. People say I used to be able to ride 15 minutes from my house. Well, you still can if you live out on the edge of the urban sprawl, or suburban sprawl. But when you're in the city, you got to go 2 hours to go somewhere to ride. Well, let's build vehicles for these people, and that way we can have places for them to ride. Like, a floodplain next to the river that they can't build anything on would be a great place to have a trail system for electric motorcycles or electric ATVs or a motocross track, something like that. So, for the manufacturers that want to expand into new demographics of consumers, I'm 150% behind it. Build vehicles that are, that those of us who live in the city can own and use.
I agree with this, because it takes what Kane was saying about the electric deal and brings it into a workable system where we still have our normal engine machines with a new line of machines that can be ridden in the environment that they're going to best perform in, which is more of an urban environment. Do you not agree with that?
Yeah, you look at the popularity of the Segway kind of electric mountain bike thing. That thing is or Suron, I'm sorry.
Suron, yeah.
Yeah, those things are super popular in cities and suburbs.
So you're onto something there, Joe, with let's build machines for the environment that they can be best used in and attach that. Because what happens with most of your manufacturers is they get into a niche and then they disband everything else, and that's gone. This is what they've done to the ATV world. They got into the UTVs and they decimated us because they thought it was going to go away. It's still strong. It would still be growing if they would still produce a machine that we could ride. It's just the way I see it. I think another thing, if we got rid of all the lawyers, we could all be better off in every line of life. but that's neither here nor there. My little political soapbox is over. Joe, you got great points, man. I didn't know that you had went that deep into your thought process on this, or our conversations go all over the board when we talk. We'll get on the phone to talk about one question, and 2 hours later we get off the phone and we didn't answer the question, and have talked about 50 different topics. So that being said, we need to figure out a way to get to our manufacturers. Joe, you and Kane seem to have a better link to the manufacturers. Is there any manufacturers that are listening to you, Kane?
Yeah, they all listen. They all listen to us, but then they also listen to their higher ups and their bean counters and their lawyers.
Is there any way to get deeper into the manufacturing group where you're getting to talk to the bean counters and you're getting to talk to the other decision makers, to where they're getting to hear something other than from their employees that go out in the field?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Our line is to the marketing reps, the testing guys, and sometimes the engineering guys. But we do talk to the product development guys too, quite a bit. That would be a good conversation for another Zoom, to get one of those guys on the air. Hopefully they would talk to you, live and see what they have to say.
Yeah, that would be great to get involved with a manufacturing company that would answer some questions, really, heartfelt, open, and honest, because they're not seeing what we're living, and I don't know, maybe I'm in a bubble, and what I'm feeling and living is not what's really going on out there. But everybody that I talk to across the country and in other countries is they can't get enough ATV parts. There's more people wanting to ride ATVs than they can provide for, and that's actually hurting the growth of the industry.
I feel the most impactful thing that we can do in the editorial space is, because I don't really feel like the people above the people that we deal with really give a shit what we think. I think the PR guys do. I think some of the product guys do. You talk to Yamaha about sport quads, they're very positive about it. They're very tight-lipped. But they are sport ATV enthusiasts. I think genuinely most of them are, that we deal with. And I think they wish that there were more. I mean, they have outwardly said, we wish other manufacturers would get in, because it would help them sell more, even because it would create hype and competition. I think the best thing that those of us in the editorial space can do is elevate those small companies and figure out, is there some machine over the horizon that's about what we need, that we can make something we need? Because what's going to make the bean counters care is when they watch somebody else counting cash. That's what they care about. And that's why you have all the Japanese and, Can-Am that are just like, we don't care about sport quads, because they're high off the smoke from the money pile that Polaris burns on a daily basis. So they can't think about anything else other than that number one spot and what Polaris is doing. And if you're not going to commit to the level of aggression and development and bringing units to market that Polaris is, you're never going to catch them. So you might as well focus in a different direction. So I think you start to show them that other people are picking up the scraps that the major manufacturers are left behind, which is the younger crowd that wants something they can afford, that would buy a sport quad, older guys like us that, yeah, I like side by sides. I think they're a lot of fun. I don't get the level of satisfaction of accomplishment riding a side by side or driving a side by side that I do in riding a four wheeler. So I think the best thing we can do is just shine a light on who's got something coming that looks promising and try to create some jealousy, because jealousy is what's driving the market right now. in my opinion. Take that, Kane. What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely could do our part. I mean, I think we had a strong hand in making the manufacturers build aluminum frames, build fuel injection, build liquid cooling, ATVs 20 years ago. And we definitely can, we talk about Yamaha till we're blue in the face about their sport quad lineup, and where's Honda and where's Kawasaki and where's Suzuki. And we're going to keep trying. I mean, and we'll throw a Suzuki in the magazine as often as we can. And in fact, there's one on the cover that's pretty exciting for the January issue. And then we'll keep it up, and hybrids. We love those too. It'd be nice if somebody like I don't know if you guys remember Service Honda. They would put they would build kind of production looking ATVs with a two-stroke motor, or dirt bikes with a 500cc motor. If somebody would come out with something like that, that'd be awesome.
They were doing 400 EXs with CR 250 engines in them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one thing that's been a point of discussion with me and a few other people is, we almost need a Tiger. Hopefully Mike Walsh doesn't call me this week, and I'm not criticizing Mike Walsh. Mike likes to build these crazy, elaborate, beautiful work of art, one-off machines where it's just like mind-blowingly awesome. I wish Walsh Racecraft was building a higher volume of full rollers with an engine option. I almost feel like we need that Tiger in the market. Tiger, for those listening who don't know, was a small three-wheeler manufacturer back in the 1980s. I mean, think of them almost like a Cannondale. They were production, but they weren't mass production like what you get from the Japanese or the North American brands. They had a number of three-wheelers with, Rotax engines from like 80s and 125 two-strokes all the way up to a 500 two-stroke. For people who don't know that there was such a thing as a 500 two-stroke three-wheeler, there was. And, ideally we could get a North American company to just come out with a rolling chassis, make a motor deal with a major manufacturer, whether it's Yamaha or KTM for engines, and you could just order a bike with, you want a 300 two-stroke? No problem. We won't sell it through a dealer. We'll sell it directly to you. Competition use only. You can buy a two-stroke quad, or a 250 or a 454 stroke quad. I think that has a place in the market that's not being filled. You can buy a hybrid, but they're kind of so one-off that they're just not cost effective. I think if we had more production, that we could maybe get the cost down just a little bit, make it more obtainable for the average guy.
It's difficult because everybody's got their own idea of how to put them together, and none of your aftermarket guys will come together and have a melding of the minds to build something together. And that's one of the problems that we have. We're all against each other, but for the industry. So it hurts the ability to grow in some ways, which I understand it. Everybody's got their own flag. They want to build their product line and sell their parts. If we were more universal, like if you took, back in the day, Roll and Lager and mix match the pieces and they made them universal fit, then more people could have bought more different things, but unfortunately they didn't do that. I don't believe the Walsh parts fit with JB parts, and JB parts don't fit with Walsh parts. I don't know the inner workings of it to see if they all mesh and fit together and work together. So if we can build aftermarket chassis that are a bolt together system with different engines, by changing the motor mounts, that would be great. I just don't see. I don't see somebody taking the time to figure it all out and then allowing the rest of us to feed off of it. If you understand what I'm getting at.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I know you've talked about it before about the KTM Husky gas deal. That would be that'd be the perfect one.
if you could get somebody in their building that could build that help them build a real quality machine. I know the Shane Hitt loves that old one that they had, but I don't want anything like that. I want an ATV that has a higher function. You can call them race ready. There's never been a race ready quad off the showroom floor. Never has been. Maybe for a C rider or an entry level person, but not a real race machine. And I'm not saying that we have to build that with some of the custom parts that you need, but if you're going to build 450s, build a 450 that can be functioned in the off road and a 450 that can go to the motocross track. It's super easy.
KTM did that. They had two different models. Well, they had four different models, but they did have off-road and motocross specific models. And
boat acres don't count, dude. Boat acres don't count.
No,
I don't think the KTM 450 EXC motor is a boat anchor.
I think
a lot of people would dispute that.
They can, but it never won anything. It never did anything. Maybe it didn't live long enough either.
It probably did in the dirt bike, but probably not. Maybe not in the ATV. I'm sure KTM won some cross countries, and to be fair to KTM, every one of the machines that came out was flawed in some way. There wasn't any perfect 450 that ever came to the market. They all had problems that you had to fix.
I was just going to say, not to interrupt you, that let's be fair to KTM. Every model that ever came off the showroom floor had problems, whether it was from Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, doesn't matter. They all had problems. So just being fair to KTM.
Yeah.
I want to segue into another thing because you guys got my blood boiling here with that conversation. I don't know what it is about the orange bikes. I just get a little upset and emotional about it. But Joe and I had a conversation, and we want to get a little bit of your input, Kane, as we roll to the end of the show. And this is a feeder to the next show. Is for the recreational people, that for the machines that you can go buy. Joe, look at Joe smiling because he's going to love this portion. The machines that are out there to buy in the industry today, 400EXs, Blasters, Warriors, your LT230, you can still buy those. And I only brought that machine up because of Joe, because he's in love with it. And where do you think that we could start directing people to maintain and do a revitalization with these machines? Where do you think the best place to start for them is, in your opinion?
Yeah, probably a Honda 400EX, Honda 450R, or Yamaha 450, or Yamaha Blaster. Those are still available on the used market, and still plenty of parts available for them. They're great machines. You could ride them on the track as a sea rider, or ride them on the trails at the Badlands in Indiana. So anything that's accessible for $2,000, $3,000, and put another $1,000 in some upgrades, and you got yourself a good ATV. And it's not a $10,000 brand new one.
Have you guys looked into a possible buyer's guide to help people for what to look for on used ATVs, as far as where they can go? Stop smirking, Joe. You'll get your chance.
I'm good.
So something where what they can do to diagnose any issues that they'll come up with on some of the older UTV or ATVs that are available?
Yeah, we've done plenty of articles on how to buy a used ATV, and we probably do one once every year or two. But that's a good conversation to have to do another one, because they're still out there, and I look all the time on Craigslist and Marketplace for one of those machines, or maybe even an LTR that's in good shape, and they're still out there. There's a few of them still out there.
Yeah, we see them barn finds that they, for lack of a better term, that are just incredibly nice machines that look like they did when they rolled off the showroom floor. Go ahead, Joe. Let's hear what you have to say, because Kane, you'll have to excuse this. This guy beats me up every time we're on the phone about these purchasable machines that you can buy, from the Blaster to the 230 Quad Sport, and all of these things. Every time we talk on the phone, I hear about it. So go ahead, Joe. It's your turn. Shoot.
I want to hear what's good about the 230 Quad Sport. That's for sure, because I don't think that exists.
Okay. Well, all right. Okay. I'm the quad whisperer, and I can find lots of good things to say about every major brand's former sport ATV offerings. I don't think there's one that I hate. What's good about the LT230? Well, it's historic. It was the first sport ATV produced, and a lot of people just are like, no, that's the quad racer. Well, it came out in the same year. The LT250R in 1985. If you guys can find yourself a copy of Dirt Wheels 1985. I don't remember what the month was, but Dirt Wheels had a really great issue where they introduced their first test of the LT230 Quad Sport and the LT250 Quad Racer, and they ran them together in the same article. The Quad Racer was more focused, obviously at the ATC 250R, Tri-Z, the high performance two-stroke three-wheeler segment, taking that market. But then the LT230 was, if you look at the size, the suspension, the engine, displacement configuration, it was just in price. It was obvious that LT230 was focused at the ATC 200X buyer, which was selling a ton of units, was a very popular machine. And it's funny, there's still a lot of ATC 200Xs and LT230s for that matter on the used market. So, I've known a couple guys just locally that started racing on LT230s, which is the first thing they bought. They didn't know. They bought one. They started racing four-stroke class. This was the early mid-90s before the 400EX came back out. So, you didn't need as much machine, and, a lot of people cut their teeth on them. And what's great about them is you can still find them on Marketplace for $1,300-$1,500. So
did they reverse?
What's that?
Did they have reverse?
They did.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It was a little awkward because you had to. It's been a while since I rode mine, and I ride a lot of four-wheelers, but you pretty much got to start, I think, in neutral, flip a switch with your heel that's down by your foot, and then you got to shift down into reverse. Yeah. And then it's a little cumbersome and awkward, but it was a first effort. But I think the fact that what's great about it is you can buy them cheap. There's still a ton of them running, and that says something about their initial build quality. So yeah, I think any four-wheeler you can buy that's decently reliable, that's cheap, that runs well, it's a winner. So that bike still has its place for some people, and I have one in my basement, and I rode it the other day for just a little bit because we're going to film it, and I have fun on it. But I have fun on all four-wheelers, just about.
If you rode it in your basement, how big is your basement, dude?
I have it in my basement. I wasn't riding it in my basement. Oh. So
I know that you're very wealthy, and I know that you have a castle. I was just wondering if that castle had a huge, huge basement in it.
Oh, please do not let the average person out there know how much money you make as a power sports editor, because then everyone will want to do it.
Kane's going, what?
Where is this money?
Trust me.
Exactly.
I do want to say what my dream quad I wish the manufacturers would come out with right now
Ooh.
is a Honda 450 fuel injected steel frame with low cost shocks. It can be 46 or 47 inches wide. So the average guy could buy that thing and go to the sand or go to the trails and have a great time. Or the racer could buy it, throw all the suspension away, put some good stuff on, and go racing. And then we'd have a red quad and a blue quad out there. And you could build that thing for, nowadays prices $7,500 or less. And I would kill for Yamaha to do something like that. I mean, sorry, Honda to do something like that.
So let me ask you this question really quick, and I'm going to direct this at you first, Kane, and then you can go, Joe. Everybody capped on the Honda because you always had to change all the suspension components. Have you ever seen a Yamaha go to the racetrack at a higher level that didn't have all the components changed, just like a Honda?
No, yeah, no, not exactly. So why not build that stuff cheap? Because it's going to be thrown away anyway. And, except for the trail guy could leave it on, and you're not going to heat up a non-reservoir shock on the trail, you don't need a reservoir shock. You need something that's decent and it'll work fine on the trail for the trail guy. But the performance guy, he's going to throw a set of Elkas on anyway, because they're great.
Joe, you answer that question.
Well, as far as what would I like to see the manufacturers come out with?
No. So have you ever seen a performance?
No, the answer is no. And it's kind of a shame, and that doesn't matter. The answer is no. I think the YFZ 450 for a C-class guy is raceable in stock condition. I think you could win with just uncorking it and a steering stabilizer with the basics, but it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is monkey see, monkey do. So as long as everybody else in your class is upgrading suspension, if dad's got the money or you got the money, you're going to do the same thing. And I agree with Kane wholeheartedly. I don't know if the price of the bike would be $7,500. Seems like that would be reasonable. Sorry, I don't mean to keep doing that influx of my voice where I go up at the end of my sentence. I sound like AOC. But Yamaha, if we recall, they had the original carbureted YFZ 450, discontinued it, came back 2 years later after they brought out the fuel injected model a year or two, and they brought back the original carbureted YFZ 450 with a non-FCR carburetor with budget shocks. I mean, it was the Yamaha version of what Kane's talking about. And unfortunately, that unit only lasted 2 years. And I think that a lot of that had more to do, this is just my opinion, I think that had more to do with Yamaha trying to burn through a surplus of parts than them necessarily wanting to keep that unit in the market long term. But I know my local Yamaha dealerships were like, Joe, why did they discontinue the YFZ 450, the $6,900 one? Why did that go away? And I'm like, did you sell many? And they're like, we couldn't keep them on the floor. They sold themselves. Like, why did they quit making that?
It's odd because the performance market wasn't there for them. You didn't get a lot of people taking that year model and buying exhaust pipes and buying all of these things for them. They rode them stock.
Yeah.
They kept them stock.
It
had that Mikuni carb on there, and I have a whole kit where I went out and tested the jetting and everything for the exhaust and the air intake system, and I have a whole kit for it, and I don't dip into it very often because not as many people buy upgraded componentry for that model with that Mikuni on it.
But I think Kane is right. I've often thought about why doesn't Honda just bring back the 400EX fuel injected almost like the way it left the market? Only ditch the carb, go fuel injected, put an air induction on it, wreck it that way so you can meet emission standards, whatever you got to do. Because if they can sell a CRF 250F, which is essentially the same, Lenny, feel free to correct me. I mean, it's essentially the same engine configuration. It's just a bigger engine.
Similar.
It's air cooled 4-valve single overhead cam, right? The CRF 250F, the non motocross air cooled bike. So if you can sell that bike for under $5,000, there's generally been a tracking of ATV to dirt bike to ATV prices. So it's like, if they can build us that 250 for under $5,000, why couldn't they give us a fuel injected 400EX for $6,000? And what Kane's talking about by going to a 450 engine is really even better than what I was thinking with a 400EX, because at least then you have a universal model. You have that good Honda reliability in stock condition with an engine that has the potential to make race horsepower. So yeah, $7,500, $8,000.
For the Honda, they build an X model and an R model. Your R model is your more racy model that's wider with the upgraded shocks like the Yamaha R, and your X model is your lesser quality shock with the narrow front end, narrow rear end, and maybe they're the exact same engine with a couple minor changes, just like the motorcycle, and you've solved your issue.
My only rebuttal to that would be, every time you make, and this, anytime that you make another variation in the manufacturing process, you're adding cost. So I think one thing that's essential for reintroducing the sport ATVs is, if you're not going to build a full-blown race model, then make it damn cheap, because you're trying to get that guy who doesn't have the money to get into a side-by-side who's younger. So simple is going to result in a lower MSRP, and I think that that's essential for the success of whatever thing might come out.
I don't disagree, even though what we'd love to see and what we're going to see are two different things. Kane Schmid from Dirt Wheels, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate all that you do for the industry and what you're doing with Dirt Wheels and your UTV stuff. Keep doing it. We're followers and fans. Joe Tolley from ATV On Demand and UTV On Demand. If you guys are out there and you want to see a review on something, this is your guy. This is where you go to check it out. I'm Leonard Duncan, your host of ATV Talk. Every Tuesday at 5:00 Pacific Standard Time, you can catch a new audio episode from people in the industry. Gentlemen, have an amazing weekend and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lenny. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kane. Talk to you guys later.